Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We warmly welcome you all to the first day of the webinar series on Biomimicry for Sustainability, organized by GAP Research and Development Center in collaboration with the India-Sri Lanka Foundation. During this webinar series, we will talk about the ideas behind biomimicry and show examples of how it can make a big difference. Our speakers will share how learning from nature can change the way we think and act, helping us create a more sustainable and resilient future. Our goal is to help you understand biomimicry better and inspire you to use nature-inspired solutions in your work and daily life. Whether you are a researcher, designer, entrepreneur, or just interested in sustainability, I'm pretty sure this webinar will offer a valuable insights and ideas. So let's learn from nature and work together to create solutions that benefit both people and planet. Without taking much more time, I would like to invite Professor Ranjith Dissanayake to give a brief introduction to today's webinar. Sir, please let me give you a chance to briefly introduce you.
Please go ahead.
Professor Ranjith Dissanayake is a professor in civil engineering at the University of Peradeniya, and he is a chartered engineer and a fellow of the Institution of Engineers, Sri Lanka, and holds membership from several other prestigious institutions. And he was a Fulbright scholar in the USA, Endeavour Fellow in Australia, and Jeso Research Fellow in Japan. And furthermore, he was awarded the Young Scientist Award in 2007 for excellence in scientific research by the National Science and Technology Commission of Sri Lanka. And he received the Overseas Prize of the Institution of Civil Engineers in the UK in 2007 and the Australia Alumni Excellence Award in 2012. He is the co-chair in the 50th International Conference on Sustainable Built Environment at Kandy and the second International Conference on University-Industry Collaborations for Sustainable Development at Colombo. And he is the immediate past chairman of the Green Building Council of Sri Lanka, the president of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, and vice president of the Chamber of Construction Industry. And also he is a former secretary to the State Ministry of Rural Roads and the State Ministry of Urban Development. He is the founder of several companies, including Lego International Private Limited, ICB Private Limited, Lanka AAC Private Limited, GAP Private Limited, and WSP Private Limited. Dear sir, over to you.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Hope you can hear me well. As Sadeepa mentioned that this is the beginning of the series of activity for the this year on biomimicry for the sustainability. Here with we will be having the 5 webinars and the workshop and the international conference line up with the activities. Let me start with the biomimicry. So how I see at the biomimicry, we being scientists, most of us, have created the many things for the advantage of the mankind. Some of them has become really a problem for us. Some of the creation will go with the harmony with the nature. So with that, now we have a lot of issues, like the scarcity of the material and the pollution and many, many issues. That's what we have been practicing the sustainability. But again, while we are trying to find out the solution for the sustainability, it is very, very important that we go with the biomimicry. That's what the theme of this series we have created as a biomimicry for the sustainability. It's a well-known area, the sustainability. If we incorporated the biomimicry into the sustainability, we can have a better deal in sustainability. So there are things that we can learn from the nature. And mimicking that to what we want is the way biomimicry. Biomimicry is about the valuing the nature for the what we learn, not what we can extract or harvest or demonstrate. In the process, we learn about ourselves, on our purpose and our connection to each other and our home and earth. So we investigate the nature, understand how nature has find the solution for the problem that the nature has. So we imitate that for the problem that we have. So that whatever we come up with the solution, there are good examples. I'll come up with some of the examples which has given the better results. We all agree that the best scientist or the best laboratory is the nature. Though we have done a lot of big innovation, but still some of the very simple thing happen in the nature, we even cannot imagine it. Therefore, it is very, very important to study about the nature and try to find out the solution for our issues that we have. Therefore, we have to learn and innovate nature's potential and the biological integrity, and to make sure that the innovation solution come out of it. Let me come up with one solution which is bit related to the building, of course, a bit built environment, energy, maybe building sector. It has been understood that the thermite mound, it is a natural model, it's a nature model, has a different the activities within it, especially in ventilation. It see that the compare with the outside temperature with the inside temperature, it is understand that even though how much the temperature is hot outside, inside temperature kind of variation is not much, not remain constant, but not much. So if you wanted to maintain the inside temperature, when especially in the hot climate, this we can imitate. So that has been, people has done it. The human, it is become a human application, building ventilation. So solution come from the thermite mound. So you don't see sometime similar building everywhere, but the people has used this concept in order to reduce the temperature inside. Some of the bigger way, as you see that, some building has in a reasonable way. But this is a very good example how we learn from the nature. Let me go to another example. Right. This is a small story. Most of you may know that the Japanese developed this speed train they call as a Shinkansen bullet train. But the lot of tunnels are there. When it passed through the tunnel, there is a huge noise coming. The people start to complain. Story as far as I know. Therefore, one engineer, he's also a bird watcher, found that this kingfisher Kingfisher has a different shape because in the nature, he hunt the fish and do his life living. But because of his shape, he could catch the fish without disturbance to the water. Otherwise, he cannot do that because whenever he try to catch the fish will leave. So there he understands the less disturbance because of the shape of of course the other features also there. Then same concept, I mean the same geometrical shape was mimicked into the bullet train, and they found that it is successful. There is no complaint from the people, and the noise, of course, the speed and the energy and many things was improved while solving the main problem. The main problem is the noise come out of the bullet train when it leave the tunnel. Of course, the increase of the sound is really, as I remember, 30% or something like that. Energy and the speed also increase because of this shape. So there is another classic example how the biomimicry application came to the engineering application. So likewise, what we do in the theme of biomimicry for the sustainability, we try to find out the solution from the nature and try to make sure that the sustainable solution will be created with our innovation. Here, few photographs, which I'm not going to explain into the detail, as when you see that, you will see that, of course, the case of kingfisher and the shinkansen, there are some other pages where how it was inspired and brought with the inspiration from the coming from the nature. Because all animal, all other living thing has a different way of living. In order to have this comfortable living, nature has created the different shape, different the texture of the material and so forth. So what we do as a scientist, those who are especially in the area of biomimicry, try to understand this and get that solution. So these are the periods. Likewise, there are several the example that we can bring. And if you go to the most of the successful innovation is again based on the nature inspired solution. According to the some reports, it say that the biomimicry innovation and the GDP is like a predicted for the 2030. Different sector like starting with the building construction, cement, concrete, and chemical manufacturing, and so forth until the textile and apparel. How the GDP will be in 2030. That means that with the pressure of what we have right now, scarcity of the material, increase of the climate change, we have to adapt it, and the disaster. Because of all of these, we have to move, especially in next decades, to find out the solution from the nature for the sustainability. Sustainability is a must that you realize, and now we have to bring the solution from the nature. Therefore, you will see that the huge market will be there for the biomimicry. As Sadipa mentioned at the beginning, this is the collaboration between the Sri Lanka India Foundation and the GAP headquarters. And we really appreciate the financial assistance and the other guidance from the Sri Lanka Foundation. We have been collaborate with the few universities in India too in order to conduct this webinar and the workshop and the conference series. And we at the GAP Research and Development, we established the Biomimicry Research Center. This GAP Biomimicry Center will run this series toward the biomimicry for the sustainable development. And here you will see our website, Biomimicry Research Center. And here you will see, including what we are doing today, we will have the 5 webinar series. This is conducted free of charge. We will be issued the e-certificate. Those who successfully completed all the workshop and the webinars. And we will have the tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and 31st and 1st of June. Mainly, today we are talking about sustainability for the biomimicry and social entrepreneurships and the biomimicry and innovation, biomimicry in construction, biomimicry in agriculture. And we might have one more topic later, biomimicry in agriculture. This is the event that we have planned, last event, that is International Conference on the Biomimicry. We have started calling the papers. We go for the abstract calling at the beginning. So detail you can find out on website as well as the calling for this number. With that, I would like to conclude my short presentation. Next, we have the Professor Sarath Kotagama. I will allow him to do the next part of the presentation. Sadipa, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Your constant guidance and encouragement certainly take us to a new height. So thank you very much again. Now let's move on our session today. Today's lecture will be conducted by Professor Sarath Kotagama. Actually, it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce him. Professor Sarath Kotagama is an emeritus professor of environment science, the Department of Zoology, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, and he is the leading ornithologist in Sri Lanka. He was the recipient of many awards for his exemplary service, including the Vidya Jyoti Award, and he received President Science Award for 2006 to 2012 for science publication of international standards. Furthermore, Professor Kotagama is a former director, Department of Wildlife Conservation of Sri Lanka. So I cordially invite Professor Sarath Kotagama to share your valuable thoughts on this webinar. Dear sir, over to you.
Basically, what I would want to do is to try and impress upon you the problem that we are facing with sustainable development while trying to understand what sustainable development is, which itself is quite a complicated subject since its origin way back. But let me quickly run through how we approach that point and how we are trying to achieve something in the midst of the turmoil and the development and the confusion that the world is in. We come to this planet somewhere around 2.5, 2.6 million years ago and stay like that in that lifestyle, which we call hunter-gatherer, for more than 98% of our time on the planet, which means that we are just so young in compared to most of the animals that we know, most of the plants that we know. It's almost like nothing. To give a very simple example, if the world was formed on the 1st of January, we are not there even at the last gong of December 31st of the year. It is only at the last gong that we come onto the planet as human beings. That is how much time we have. But within those milliseconds that we are being here, we have made such a huge stride and change that we have almost completely turned everything upside down. And we are a threat to ourselves in a sense, within inverted commas. That is what we need to recognize. So the so-called environmental problem that we did recognize way back earlier than 60s, we know we have had many issues with what we have done with the planet, and they were not considered as problems till about the 60s. Why did we consider them as problems? Is because we recognized that the so-called, again, I always go on these things because those are the mythological words that we are using to define our development process and to consider ourselves superior in this planet at the moment. The idea of development that we launched in the 40s after the Second World War with the new order, that's the new development order, and that is where we are still going. And we know that we have tried many options to change, but we have not. And one of the options to change is the idea of sustainable development. We are trying hard since we just recognize that the planet cannot continue to be, I would say in a very sarcastic way, destroyed or in the sense parasitized or even go to the extent of innovating some things that are not on the planet. So creativity is what is there, but that creativity has caused such immense problems to us. You need to take only just one single example. This means of getting my voice from where I am to you is an innovation that has done wonders to us so that over 600 people can listen to me. But when we have satisfied ourselves with it, and in the process of making this tool, the computer, we have done a lot of damage to the environment. We are still justifying it on the process of what is happening now, this way of being able to communicate. Now, we did come to realize this way back in the 60s when Rachel Carson, who was the first person who really did popularize the problem to us. And in response to all of that, and then the Earth Day program of 1970, when Senator Gaylord Nelson harnessed the whole world's American embassies and the people who lived across the world, because he was a senator at that time, we rose to indicate that we have a problem with respect to the way we are doing things in the environment on the 22nd of 1970. That led to, and many others, to the discussions that we know that happened at Stockholm in 1972, June 3rd to 5th. And we were very clear at that time as third world nations, and our spokesperson, Madam Indira Gandhi, late Madam Indira Gandhi, very clearly told at the conference to the UN that the so-called non-aligned and the poor countries, the developing countries, were where they were because we were not developed. And therefore, the problems that y'all are facing in the developing countries need not necessarily be the problem to keep us underdeveloped. Give us the means to develop so that we can get the benefits of development, where the biggest environmental problem was recognized as poverty. Now we can start defining it and asking what has poverty got to do with the environment and so on and so forth. But at that time, Madam said, as long as we are poor, we will be destroying the planet. And how was it happening? Just take the case of Sri Lanka. At that time, if you were around in this country, unfortunately, I suppose most of us were not there, but sadly, we were there. And we knew how much of forest was destroyed in this country for the sake of agriculture and for the sake of development into the future production to make the people rich. At the very same time, there were those villagers and the people of the backline and the backward areas who were migrating into the cities. Take Colombo, for example. We had a lot of migrant workers in the city. Who are the people who took the stuff from place to place? And if you go to Fort, you can see all of them. At the end of the day, where did they go? They went to a place not under a roof, but they found the reserves in the city municipality where they put up shanties or structures for shelter. And we had the shanties. So many years ago, not many, but maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, 55% of the population of Colombo was shanty dwellers. Who were they? And if they were not there, do you think Colombo would have functioned? No, it could not have. So these were the issues that were there in the 70s with the developing countries. And that's why Madam requested that the developed countries should give the developing countries the opportunity to develop. And it was endorsed. And in the world, we know that from 1972 till 1982, all developed countries gave immense amount of grant money for developing countries to develop. But then we saw it became a mistake. We just duplicated what happened in the developed countries. We just went berserk and broke out all the natural systems and destroyed it and got a problem bigger than what we had in the 70s. It was not poverty anymore that is the problem of the environment. It became forest destruction, pollution, and you name it, all the other things that we know today. And then we had to find a solution. And 82 in Nairobi, it was decided, let's ask somebody to find out what happened. A committee of 21 were appointed and headed by Madam Brundtland, who was the only person at that time who had been a Minister of Environment and was the Prime Minister of Norway at that time. She was given the task with 21 other people to come and tell us what went wrong with this gracious giving of money to the developing countries to develop and get the benefits. And they came up 5 years later and said, this is the issue. This is not the way to go. We should not go in this development pathway. We should therefore change it to sustainable development. But the thoughts of what came in sustainable development were already there way back in the 1980s, when the World Wildlife Fund, IUCN, and UNEP got together and developed Saving the Planet or Saving the World program, in which they said this idea that you should be using the resources of nature in a very sensible way and not create a problem, but benefit from it. Isn't that what Professor Ranjith using nature for the benefit of mankind, for us? So we have, in a sense, practiced the ideology of biomimicry. And we in Sri Lanka, for example, I with Moratuwa of University of Moratuwa, for students who were in the design and the general student population of Moratuwa, with the assistance or help or the ability to harness the students together, Professor Lakdas Fernando, who was at the textile at that time, we took students from Moratuwa to Singharaja Forest with the theme, design, inspirations of nature for design. Now, the problem was that this word biomimicry did not exist at that time. But to think that humans were not using the ideology, the thinking, I think is not right to be said. We did, and very clearly Professor Ranjith did give some examples. Every action man has done to enable himself to be better than what he was in the past has been something that we have looked at nature and inspired ourselves and converted it in through a technological means. But then where did we go wrong? And that is where we come to the idea of sustainable development. So we know the classical definition that was given, which has the terms which we have forgotten to analyze and understand even today. Forgot to analyze and understand even today. That is the needs of mankind and not the wants of mankind. As long as we are going to be looking for the wants from the planet, even through biomimicry, even through other means, we will still end up with the same problem. Let me take the very first example with Professor Ranjith to explain biomimicry, the termite hole. What the termite hole did was give us the example of maintaining a temperature inside that termite hole, which in some cases in Africa had been as tall as 5-10 feet. A constant temperature anywhere inside that termite hole. But what are we doing with it today? We have used technology to create the air conditioner. And we have reduced the temperature of our indoors and our office space and our working space to something less than what is in the ambient temperature. For comfort, assuming that we do better in it than in the general temperature outside. Under normal circumstances, if we are human and animal, and if we are to mimic ourselves as animals in the human planet, should not we be doing the same as what is outside? Why must we make it down and bring super comfort to ourselves? Try to keep a constant temperature which is lower than what is in the ambient temperature. Why not the same ambient temperature? Looking at the conditions and situations of where the building is and what the building is. My challenge to the designers and the constructors and the engineers for the last 20 years is still on board. And I hope that somebody will bring the answer from over these 500% also. What is the need for an air conditioner to bring down the temperature beyond 2 floors heights, if not for a design problem? You build a box and seal yourself inside, and the body temperature will take you beyond 25. And that is why the architectural designers came up with passive ventilation, mimicking from the termite hole. But we took one step further. We wanted the temperature lower than that constant maintenance of the termite hole temperature. And in it, we created and innovated the air conditioner, which is a disaster if you look at it in the environmental terms. Nobody wants to talk about it. For more than 100 years, we didn't touch that machine to change. It is the Singaporean National University of Singapore, which for the first time, about 10 years ago or 8 years ago, came up with the first revised model of the air conditioner. Not the innovators saying we are going to save energy and all of that. The fact that we are living in a shell, which is not biomimic, must be thought very carefully if we are reflecting ourselves into the future as humans to live on this planet. But you and I will all agree, we have messed it up. The temperature outside is not ambient 24, 25, but it is now around 28 and maybe 30s and 40s. Who is the cause for that? Isn't it that we have gone beyond what is natural? And why have we done this? Because it is our own creation, our own innovation. If we still look at nature, we can still reduce these types of damages by bringing in innovations that are working perfectly well in nature. That is where biomimicry can still contribute. And that is why today, biomimicry is more important than what it was yesterday. Because one of the biggest problems to attaining sustainable development, as I said, as given in the definition, the needs are not what we are addressing. We are always addressing the wants of the people. And to get the wants of the people, we have to unfortunately go beyond the sustainable levels. So unless and until we recognize very clearly what are the needs of the people, which we are now coming to grips with gradually, because the effect of the damage that we have brought about upon ourselves are now across the board, almost everybody, and very much those who enabled it are feeling it. Climate change, we spoke of as environmentalists as way back as 1980s or even earlier. If we are scientists and if we are scientific, should we not be respecting the science when it was said more than 100 years ago that if carbon dioxide concentration is going to increase in the atmosphere, the ambient temperature will increase? That was Arrhenius, a physicist. And there are many examples like this. And yet, we are the ones who have faltered. And because we have faltered and not looked seriously into how nature has managed it all this time for more than 4.5 billion years, we've been thinking ourselves as superior and can do anything that we like, has distorted the very names of development. And that is why we were given the scenario of sustainable development. And when you look at it, we know it still tries to keep the innovative thoughts of humans in the terminology. In the good old days, we had sustainable development as trying to bring three key factors together, which was the economy, society, and the environment. We had three balls rolling around, and we were trying to overlap them, and we were trying to pull them together. And we know in the system, especially academic system, the art students are in one corner and they learn economics and social sciences. We in the science are in another corner looking at how to tinker everything and change everything through the scientific knowledge that we have obtained. But once we have innovated something, put something out, it becomes a market product, let's say. And the market product, how it moves in the market, has nothing to do with the science. It has to do with economics. It has to do with social acceptance or sociology. Now, this is what was recognized in the sustainable development early model. These three elements needed to be pulled together and made as one as possible. But imagine pulling three different experts together. Would the experts who were economists at that time, or the sociologists at that time, or the scientists at that time agree to go over or be under the economics or the sociology? So the three models, the model with the three elements being brought together was not working. So we changed it. We asked the question, why is it not working? I was part of those discussions, so I can tell and I was involved in it. And we said, why must we think that these experts should? Our education system should have changed more than 30 years ago to enable sustainable development to be a realistic pathway today. We have still not done it. We have still not done it. We are only tinkering it. We are only drawing thoughts and saying, well, we are giving it. Do we give enough economics to our engineering students? Do we give enough economics to our science students? Do we give enough sociology for the scientific community to understand the intricate details of economics and sciences? But we all go to the market and buy things for the single cent. We are so worried about the single cent. We are so worried about what is happening with the changing economic value for the dollar. Why is it happening that way? How many do understand this? And we still think that these are compartment studies that should carry on. When are we going to bring that together? Sustainable development will never ever become a reality as long as you have these three elements apart. That is why about 20 years ago, around 2000, we brought the idea of encapsulating all of them inside each other. You will have economics in the middle. Around it, you can have sociology. Around it, you can have ecology, the knowledge of environment, the scientific knowledge of environment. Or you can have ecology in the middle, around it, economics, around it, sociology. You can play around with any triple. It doesn't matter. But the significance is that the outcome must be healthy to the environment or the planet that we live in. This model exists, but we never talk about it in our sustainable development discourse because we are not there. And if we get everybody in that shell where every person understands very clearly not the rupees and cents that discriminates the price of a couple of cents, but the philosophy of it. Just take one example, thinking of the time. When did the economists come with externalities, which they never had in their theory? Today they have. Every action we do has an impact outside, direct from human. And that needs to be costed. So environmental impact costing, externalities costing must be borne by the person who is enjoying the benefit of that innovation, of that practice, of that development. The others must not be the recipients of the damage. Others must not be the recipients of the vomit. They must be the benefits as much as the person who's receiving it. Now, all that is what we call sustainable development. A development process that does not discriminate X, Y, and Z, which spreads to all of them equally. And the theoretical models to achieve this do exist, but one needs to look at it in depth. The conceptual change of a linear development process to a circular development process is very important. Let me show you people who were not either an economist, but were designer and a chemist brought together in 1992. This is cradle to cradle philosophy. The book came out in 2000 plus. It's a very interesting publication. And we know the Hanover Principles for Construction, the Hanover Principles for Development is there, and it has been there. So may I challenge you? How many of us in the academics field teach these to the technical students of today? We leave them to find it for themselves. No, we have a responsibility. If we are to achieve sustainability through biomimicry, through nature and its inspirations, through nature as a substitute, nature-based development, all of these can be realistic and we can blend within this only if we do realize that we need to know nature better. We need to harness the knowledge base that is existing around us and fix it and put it together for the future to achieve the objectives. At that point, you will find that the most important one that decides, unfortunately, is the economy. The economic theory is the one that has clearly clouded our minds in every way, whatever field that we are. And it is yet necessary that what we agreed in 2012, therefore, to green the economy be taken more seriously than just talking about greening the building constructions, greening the roads, greening the society, greening things, etc., etc., etc. A lot of what we are doing in the name of greening is just not having understood the biomimic that really is needed. Finally then, can we mimic back what was there in terms of what we have lost? Forest destruction and forest recreation, restoration. Nowhere. Not possible. But we need the trees back for a specific function that we can probably bring back. If not, it is not restoration, but rewilding. Let the forest grow with a little bit of help. And that theory is what Sri Lanka gives the world from the Puffum Arboretum. But do we do it? Are we using it? Even our botanists don't know. So we see as environmentalists, that's my role. Even though I'm a zoologist and an ornithologist, my role for the past 60 years has been an environmentalist through a scientific window. Because we are all scientists and we are all affected by the science, whether we like it or not. Even if we are social, we call it social sciences now. We call it economic sciences now. We are all thinking scientifically, and that is a very strong power of thought in which nature can easily be connected to what we want into the future without destroying the planet as we have done in the past. To undo something that you have got addicted to is not an easy task. So when I hear zero plastic, I am only crying. Where can ever we become zero plastic? Are we going back to the glass bottle? Yes, but where can we go and where can we not go? Do we know that? Can we replace some of the things that we are done with? Can you throw your computer away and think of doing a computer without going to the plasticized items that are inside it? It's not possible, but as a thought process, definitely yes. So we should be clear that when we use taglines, that what we are saying is not exactly what the English is trying to say, but we mean otherwise. So this is where I leave you. So we can achieve sustainable development if we study deeper and understand it better by going back to nature, because that is where the answers are. So mimicking nature is the pathway for achieving sustainable development. So biomimicry for sustainable development. So thank you very much for enabling me to do, but sorry for the technology. So as most of you might know, my definition of technology is what you don't have when you want it. Wow, I have taken 1 minute more.
Yeah.
Are we having questions?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, yes.
Sir, as we are talking about sustainable development and mimicking the environment around us, do we literally mean that we need to go back and say no to globalization?
Good question. That is where I said how you enable yourself to move in. There is no question of saying no globalization. But what do we mean by globalization? Is the globalization the unified model of economy? Or is it the unified use of all items that are developed or brought to the market technologically by X in the developed country across the whole world? Or is it the globalization of thought of the product use? So I think your question is very good, because that is what we are not questioning ourselves. We have created all these words, but do we know how much meaning goes with it? If you globalize society, just imagine what we are going to be. Can you do that? If we are believers of culture, if we are believers of humans as bioproducts, can you globalize it? So you do understand what I'm saying. Yes, there are some things like user items, maybe, I'm saying maybe, maybe if we look at it, there is an opportunity to globalize. Maybe shoes, say like that. We all like to wear shoes, but can it be one shoe? We know how, at least let's not globalize, countryized. Some countries we opened, let's say I'm open because I know it happened. We know what was China before they changed under Mao Zedong, right? They all had to wear the same uniform, they all had to do the same thing, etc., etc., etc. Right? Do we want that? Aren't we humans the culture of diversity as much as bio, which is diversity? So I think these are the questions that we need to elaborate on. Then we come to the answers, Rajan.
Thank you, sir. Sir, also, if we have to initiate, what are the first 1 or 2 or 3 mini steps that we should start acting upon as a community?
Okay, you're testing me well. Well, being
Sir,
involved,
with your experience, definitely we would like to enlighten ourselves.
Yeah, no, it's just the way I use myself. Yes, what I have seen is that, as I told you along, we have yet not properly analyzed our needs, wants. That's number one. Because if we really do analyze our needs and wants, you will see that we can still find diversity and yet achieve the same objective, because that's what nature does, right? So we don't need necessarily to duplicate everything equally in every part of the community, and the community must understand that. So how you convey that understanding to the community is number one. It is very necessary, right? The general philosophy of thinking that, you see, I used to say, democracy is where we all elect a person and then bragad him for doing what he says or does, right? Communism, in the way that existed in the past, is where a single person comes and tells everybody what to do, which is the choice you want. And get problems. So then what is the problem? What's the answer? So when we go to the community, I think the most important thing to me, as I have worked it, is to understand the community first. What is it, their aspirations? If their aspirations is to be like, okay, let me use, I hope you are from India.
I am, sir.
Right. So I'll use Indian example, which I always use when I talk about development. Madam Gandhi, not Indira, Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, was asked by a Britisher at the end of when India got independence, will you develop India the way you have seen it in the world where you have traveled, and especially of the United Kingdom? This is apparently what I know of as his answer was.